I never thought it would happen to me. One simple mistake, one night of weakness, and everything I thought I knew about loyalty and trust was shattered. What started as a secret crush became something that spiraled out of control. And now, the truth is out. My friend's wife, my best friend, and her sister. What happens when they all find out about me? And worse, about my husband? This all started innocently. I never meant for anything to happen. It's always the way, isn't it? You meet someone, they make you feel special, they give you attention, and suddenly, your world shifts. But that's not how it's supposed to happen. Not with him, not with my best friend. I knew she wouldn't understand, but then again, I wasn't thinking straight. I wasn't thinking at all. It started with a text, a harmless message from a man I've known forever, my best friend's husband. He'd always been charming, kind, everything you'd want in a friend's husband. Or so I thought. Then one night he messaged me again. I miss seeing you. We should hang out soon. Just the two of us. Catch up. I laughed it off at first. But the thing is, I hadn't been feeling wanted at home. My husband, oh God, he was so distant, so busy with work. And I was aching for something more. I wanted attention. I wanted connection. And here it was, right in front of me. I didn't want to admit it, but I was drawn to him. How could I not be? He was everything my husband wasn't. Charming, charismatic, attentive, and just a little dangerous. It wasn't long before we started meeting up. Coffee turned into dinners, dinners turned into drinks, and before I knew it, I was in his arms. I've wanted you for so long, he whispered, his breath warm on my neck. I froze for a second, but then I kissed him back. I should have stopped. I should have pulled away. But that night, I didn't. And one kiss turned into one night, and that night turned into something I couldn't take back. Now the worst part wasn't that we'd slept together. It wasn't even the guilt I felt. It was the moment I realized I had done something worse. I had slept with my best friend's wife. I tried to tell myself that I could keep this a secret. I thought it would be okay, that I could handle the consequences later. But things were spiraling. My best friend was getting suspicious. You've been distant lately. Is everything okay? She asked, her eyes searching mine for something. I was lying, of course. I didn't know how to stop. There were no words to explain the intensity of what was happening. And then, the unthinkable happened. The night she confronted me wasn't like I thought it would be. No, it was worse, much worse. You slept with my husband, she said, her voice trembling with hurt. She wasn't screaming, wasn't throwing things, but I could hear the betrayal in her voice, the disbelief. I tried to explain, to apologize, but nothing worked. She didn't want my apologies. She didn't want to hear my explanations. She didn't want to understand the way I felt when I was with him. But it didn't end there. Her sister, her younger sister, was there too. She had always been the free spirit, the wild one, the one who never cared about consequences. She stepped forward, looked at me with that same daring smirk she always wore, and said, "You've always wanted him. I know it. I've seen the way you look at him." And then, she kissed me, right there in front of my best friend. She kissed me, and my world tilted. I should have pushed her away. I should have stopped it. But I didn't. That kiss turned into a whole lot more. And before I knew it, her sister and I were tangled up in a situation I never thought I'd find myself in. The air was thick with desire, with confusion, with something dark and undeniable. The truth was out, and now everyone knew. My best friend, my husband, and even the sister, all of them knew. The atmosphere between us was electric, but not in the good way. There was a tension I couldn't shake off. The looks, the silent accusations, the way they watched me. Every time I stepped into a room, they were there, waiting for me to say something, anything to explain myself. Why? My husband asked one night, his voice breaking, his eyes hollow. Why did you do it? You said you loved me. You said we were fine. Was it me? Was I not enough? I couldn't answer. What was there to say? How could I explain that the thing that hurt the most was the way my world had shifted in ways I couldn't even control? That it wasn't about love anymore. It was about feeling wanted, needed, alive. But I couldn't tell him that. I couldn't face him. And then came the real reckoning. My best friend's sister, the one I thought I could escape from, came to me. You think you've lost everything? Think again. This is just the beginning. She was right. It wasn't over. The fallout was just starting. I wish I could say that everything turned out okay, that we somehow mended things, but we didn't. And maybe we never will. I can't take back what happened, and neither can anyone else. I can't undo the past, no matter how much I want to. But one thing is certain, nothing will ever be the same. As I sit here, writing this, I can feel their eyes on me. My husband's, my best friend's, even her sister's. The air between us is thick with unspoken words, and I know this story isn't over. The real question is, who will I choose? Who will be the one to stay? And who will be left behind? The silence in my house was deafening. I tried to sleep, but every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the windows seemed to echo with the heavy weight of what had happened. My mind couldn't stop replaying the scenes, each moment more vivid, more torturous than the last. I couldn't look at my husband the same way anymore. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine when every glance felt like an accusation, every touch felt like a betrayal. How could he ever forgive me? How could I forgive myself? But that wasn't even the worst part. No, the worst part was that I couldn't stop thinking about them. Her, my best friend, her sister, my best friend's husband. Every moment I had spent with them, every stolen kiss, every secret touch, it had all felt so real. And now, in the cold light of day, it felt like a haunting. I could feel them watching me, waiting for me to crack. Their eyes burned through me, filled with judgment and longing. I couldn't escape the pull. I couldn't even escape my own desires. It was a week after everything came to light when I saw her again, my best friend. She was standing at the door of my house, her expression unreadable. I hadn't heard from her since the confrontation. I thought she'd never speak to me again, and maybe, in some ways, I hoped she wouldn't. The guilt was eating me alive. But there she was, and in her eyes, I saw something that terrified me even more than the anger. You think you can just waltz back into my life? She said, her voice eerily calm. You think this is just going to blow over? That I'll forgive you? That we can go back to the way things were? I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. The words were stuck in my throat. All I could do was watch her, feeling a twinge of both fear and something I didn't want to acknowledge. I don't know what you want from me anymore, I finally managed, my voice trembling. I never meant for this to happen. It wasn't about you. It was never about betraying you. It was about, I was weak. I was looking for something I couldn't find at home. But she didn't want to hear that. She didn't want to hear anything from me. And the anger in her eyes was enough to silence me once more. You're right about one thing, she said softly. You were weak. But now, you're going to have to live with it. The door slammed behind her as she left, and I felt my heart break into 1,000 pieces. I couldn't escape the weight of her words. She was right. I had been weak. I had betrayed her in the worst possible way, and now there was no way to undo it. I hadn't expected her sister to show up that night. I was sitting alone in my living room, contemplating how to fix everything, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't sure if I was ready for another confrontation. I couldn't bear to face anyone again. But when I opened the door, there she stood, my best friend's sister, the one who had kissed me, the one who had been just as guilty as I was. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. The door barely had time to close behind her before she was in my face. I know you're thinking about him. she said, her voice low, almost hypnotic. I can feel it. I know what's going on inside your head, and I know you're not over it. You're still thinking about the way he touched you, the way he kissed you. It's not just the sex, is it? My heart raced. I didn't want to admit it, but I couldn't deny the truth. She was right. I had thought about him, about the way it felt to be wanted by someone like him. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. I had felt connected to him in a way that I hadn't felt in years. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice breaking. She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. I want you to admit something. I want you to admit that you can't walk away, that you're as tangled in this as I am, that no matter what you tell yourself, no matter how much you try to push it away, you want more. And there it was. The truth. I did want more. I wanted it all. The secrecy, the passion, the danger. I wanted to feel alive in a way I never had before, but it was too late. The guilt was suffocating me. The next day, my husband confronted me again. This time, there was no avoiding the question. I know, he said, his voice trembling. I know about what you did with him. And her. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look anyone in the eye anymore. The shame was suffocating. The betrayal was too great. I didn't want it to happen. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But he wasn't listening. His face, usually so calm and composed, was now a storm of anger and confusion. He had always been the one I leaned on, the one I trusted the most. But now, he was a stranger to me. And I was a stranger to him. Do you love him? He asked, his eyes cold. I froze. I couldn't answer. The truth was, I didn't know what love was anymore. It wasn't just about him or my best friend's husband. It was about me. I was lost, caught in a web of desire, guilt, and emotional turmoil that I couldn't untangle. Before I could speak, my best friend burst in through the door, her face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, taking it all in, me, my husband, her sister. The silence was suffocating, heavy with accusations and unspoken truths. This is the last time, she finally said. I can't do this anymore. You've destroyed everything. You've destroyed us. And just like that, the world I knew had crumbled. The relationships I had taken for granted were shattered beyond repair. There was no going back. The weight of it all crashed down on me, suffocating me in the wreckage. But the real question now was, how far would we all go? How far would I go to try to fix what I had broken? Would I fight for my marriage? For my friendship? Or would I finally give in to what I had secretly wanted all along? The answers. They weren't clear. But one thing was certain, the game had only just begun. Will I choose the man I've spent my life with? Or will I dive deeper into the forbidden world that's already taken so much from me?